Some people are saying that we're trying to actually write another constitution, but we're trying to write it through amendments to the Constitution of 1999. What's your reaction to that?
Well, they may be right in terms of substance, you know. There is a formal and there is the substantive aspect of constitution making. The formal aspect of it is to say that how do you bring about a change in the constitution? And the answer is you have to go through the constitution amendment process.
But we're trying to amend so many parts of it. Why don't we just write a new one?
The law does not stop you from, the constitutional provisions does not debar you. It does not debar you from taking on as many amendments. And in the long run, this process is to address those provisions that have been found either not to be reflective of current values or have ignored constitutional amendment processes that were terminated premature. For instance, we had one in 1989. We had another one in 1995. So you find out that this particular 1999 Constitution says that it is a necessary amendment of the 1979 Constitution. It proclaims that. So what was done in producing the 1999 Constitution to say, bring the 1979 Constitution and do the necessary amendments, like the kind of thing we say you change shillings to kobo, and you leave substantively those constitutional developments that we have experienced without bringing them in. Because in 1989, we went through a constitutional making experience that brought about, the Abiola election. The only thing left was to swear in the president. So we had constitutional innovations that came through that. Then came the 1995, to borrow the language of Bola Ige, the 5 leprous fingers that produced a constitution meant for one particular person. And that itself had some innovative provisions, address issues of local governments, address issues of revenue, address so many things. And then we had the constitutional conference under President Obasanjo, which was sabotaged now by all agreed the third time agenda. So we have been experiencing constitution, amendment or proposals or reform processes without actualizing them. So the question is, how can we bring this about? And the answer is, you can bring this about according to the provisions of the Constitution. And the provisions specify constitutional amendment. So, in substance, you can go through the constitutional amendment process and get a new constitution.
What would you say to those, therefore, who are still asking for a conference of sorts to discuss things that have to do with the Constitution? That our unity is not a given anymore. We must sit down and discuss the terms of our being together as a country. Therefore, they are also calling for a new constitution, which will include those terms of our being together as a nation.
Alera, please permit me to add this to it. Would you then subscribe to the notion that what is happening now is doing a national conference or a sovereign national conference on the cheap?
Well, you see, conceptually, sovereign national conference has been experienced in our West African, sister countries and in some Francophone countries. It's a totally different ball game from what is going on. Because
not sovereign then, national.
Okay,
let's take away the
let's specify so that people will not be confused.
Okay.
Because when you talk about sovereign national conference, it connotes an evolution of sovereignty that is backed up by people in a revolutionary manner that changes the existing constitutional framework to produce a totally new constitutional framework based on a different paradigm. Now, within that, people now say, okay, we're not looking for a revolution because we have a constitution in place, we have elections, we have this. So let's remove the word sovereign, and then we get national conference or whatever conference you have. And the truth of the matter is that itself is not inconsistent or incompatible with the constitutional provisions that we have. However, the procedure that is specified in this current constitution assumes a particularly significant role for the elected representatives in the National Assembly. And that is why you find out that this current process is being initiated by the National Assembly as the representatives of the people. If you remember, all previous constitutional amendments seems to have been at the initiation of the executive, particularly the First and Second Amendment, which were proposed subsequent to the Ways Panel, Electoral Reform Commission, in order to address issues of the malpractices in our electoral system that was confirmed not only by the courts and also by international observers. So this one now that is going on is like a midway, in the sense that it allows for the Constitution to exist, and at the same time address those issues in the Constitution that we all can come to an agreement that this needs to be changed. And that's why we started with the consultation with the 360 local government, and subsequent to that, it will also assume of debate on the National Assembly's floor, and it will go to the states, and at the state, everybody should be vigilant that those provisions that we need to bring in, we must guide them, shepherd them, midwife them, that they come to pass.
Okay. We have a caller. Let's quickly take this call. Oh, Friday again from Benin. Please quickly make your point or make your comment.
Yeah, my comment is, I think we've been kind of a little bit more ambitious. We seem to jump at so many very contentious issues in this constitutional amendment, knowing fully well this is going to take a Herculean task to get it passed. My suggestion is, why don't we take this thing in bits and pieces? Say maybe some 2-3 contentious issues that we can throw out there to see how can it pass. Now, when you bring rotational presidency, you bring state creation, you bring immunity, these are so many issues right packed in one basket. Definitely, if it favors one region or if it favors one state, it's not going to favor the other. At the end of the day, all these exercises is just going to be an exercise in futility. I'm sorry to say it. But it's obvious that this journey right from day one is not going to take us to our destination. So let's just take this in bits and pieces and just focus on what we think we can get right, what majority two-thirds of the state we are very much comfortable with. We get that done. If we are able to get another second amendment within this legislative season or the next legislation that will come in, fine. It should be a continuous process. We shouldn't just think that we can put everything here once this legislation will be done within 4 years. I don't think we can get it right. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
I seriously, Said, I have to confess that starting out, I was of the same view like Said. Like, let's take the constitutional provision. If you read it literally, it suggests that you have to do a piecemeal process of amendment whereby you debate one item and the other. We've tried that. It's not working. We had the First Amendment that did the piecemeal. Okay, conceptually, we're looking at electoral reform. And the joke of it is that the First Amendment needed a Second Amendment because there was an error in the computation of time not taking into consideration the capacity of INEC. So the moment the first INEC came in and said, oh, this cannot work. So we rushed it back and had, a Second Amendment. And then we had a Third Amendment, which was gratuitously a procedure that elevated the industrial court to the court of coordinate jurisdiction with the Federal High Court. So a lot of people feel that the piecemeal approach of taking one thing at a time will not address the national question. And the national question is related to the national conference. That is, can we address those fundamental issues in the Constitution that people feel should not continue to be there? And that is why you see that the template questions that were given to the populace address even the issue of state police. And people have come back and say, for now, let's keep state police aside. The issue of, zoning, rotational, all those things have been resolved by the people. They said, no, for now we don't want, those are not the issues that we want to deal with. We want to deal with some other issues, and that is the approach that has been adopted by the National Assembly.
Okay. Let me come back to,
I think there's
a caller on the line.
Caller on the line.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Wisdom from Ojodu.
Yeah. Please, let us not deceive ourselves. You see, constitutional review or no constitutional review, that's not our problem. Our problem is that we need to sit down and discuss this nation. If we like it, we review the constitution from now till next century, or than kingdom come, nothing will happen. You see problem everywhere in the whole region. Go to the north, what is happening in the north? They want to grant them amnesty now. Believe me, after granting them amnesty, another group will carry gun. They will grant them amnesty. And we still having the same problem. So my brother and my sister, we need to sit down and discuss this nation and know whether we are going forward or we are going back, or whether we are standing as one nation or we are not standing as one nation. So that is my contribution. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Wisdom.
Well, Wisdom, you have a point there in the sense that a lot of people hold the opinion that you are, expressing, that we need a national conference or sovereign conference of some sort to start tabula rasa on a fresh, clean state. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, we are, constricted to follow this path because there is a constitution in place. And the question is, how do you get to where you want to get to, except you go through the constitutional gate that provides the process for constitution amendment? But be that as it may, the part of departure from its own view is that there are governance issues, there are good governance issues, developmental issues, value issues that can be addressed through this process. And once those ones are addressed, they will have a ripple effect on the way and manner in which Nigeria is being governed, and of course address some fundamental, problems themselves.
I need to come back to the question that Coyote asked you earlier, and I would also like to say what the Presidential Advisor on National Assembly Affairs said, Senator Joy Imodi, who said that all this call for national conference, that this is as close to that as we can get, taking this matter to the 360 constituencies and having people, even from the grassroots, make their contribution to what should be amended in the Constitution. And he asked you a question which you didn't answer. Are we getting a national conference on the cheap by going through this route?
Okay, before you answer, I understand there's a caller on the line. Let's take that call very quickly.
Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Hello. Yeah, good morning.
Go ahead.
I'm from the island. Yeah, I just want to say, said something that really touches my heart. I talk about independent candidates. I think this independent candidate is somehow very, very much interesting. Very, very good in our system of government, because these justice people are there and talk there. They would not want Nigerians to come to the fray of the political stage. Because when you look at this system, I think they are the minority, but they want to get the power, their own men, and not allowing Nigerians who have good means for people to test the election and win in a very good manner. But I think we should check that's key for Nigerians, to check the meaning of being on at the top of the government. Because I think cannot be solved in one day, but ask the process for it. But we should make a very good candidate and come out and say, yes, good Lord, I will back it up and say, yes, the candidate is much, much better than all this DPSN or stuff that you are getting about. That's my position.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the point is independent candidacy was one of those things that was approved. It got a majority, approval to go into the Constitution. And you have to also see from the perspective that it's a good concept that will strengthen the quality and enrich the quality of candidates that will be presented. But it poses certain challenges which must be addressed by the Constitution in providing the way and manner in which independent candidacy is to be operated. But I think for now, it's one of those things that have been approved. to go into the Constitution, whether or not it will end in the Constitution, because he went through this route before, and at the states were able to say, no, we don't want independent candidacy. But I think if we all want independent candidacy, we should vigilantly, watch that those provisions are voted into as part of the provisions approved by the state houses of assembly to go into the Constitution.
Okay. Now,
back to the question of whether this particular process is piggybacking, a national conference into it. I believe if we go into the conceptual, understanding of whether it's a national conference or whether it's a sovereign national conference, this process is a constitution amendment procedure. I will not engage in semantics of saying whether it's sovereign national or, I don't think that is of substance. What is of substance is to look at the process and see the value that it adds to our constitutional, development. Basically, this process is not being, this is not the first time. Even during the colonial period, we had this townhouse, consultation in one of our constitutions. Now, if you want a national conference or in the real sense of it, then there are structures and processes that definitely will give it the imprimatur of a national conference. This is a constitutional amendment process. And a constitutional amendment process also requires wild consultation, as I've earlier expressed. So I don't think we need to get into the debate of, but to look at the substance, the value, and the merit of what we are doing. In the long run, this is what the Constitution provides. And this is the process by which we bring about constitutional amendments.
So this being all we have at the moment, would you therefore advocate that these people who are still crying for some kind of conference, would you call on them to support this process fully?
Basically,
at the moment, this is all we have.
Basically, it's an inclusive process. It's not an exclusive process. It doesn't exclude anybody from expressing his view. And from what has transpired so far, there's a lot of transparency involved in the process. Hitherto, you won't even know who did what. And hitherto, nobody even admits that there's been an error. You look at the point, there was serious debate. Let's do it and damn the consequences. That's how we used to do it. But at the end of the day, reason prevailed that this is a new thing we are doing. And let's do it in a way that will bring people into the process. So if there is anybody that feels that there are constitutional provisions or something that must, come in, I think they should give it the benefit of doubt and participate in the process. And of course, the constitutional experience is a dynamic process. They started from one amendment, first amendment, second amendment. Now we are having the third amendment and now the fourth amendment. If at the end of it, then probably there will be sovereign national conference or something else.
Or there will be another amendment.
Another amendment for that matter.
Okay.
So,
well, Austin, who's writing in from Lagos, doesn't seem to agree with you.
Yeah.
Because he says it's a well-known fact that governors and their houses of assembly will not allow the wishes of the masses to be reflected in the constitution that is being amended. Therefore, what we need is a sovereign national conference where a new constitution will be drafted. That's from Austin, who's
What's your
sent
thoughts?
in from
Because
Lagos.
we have to wrap up now.
well, Austin has a point in the sense that from the past experience that we've had with the First and Second Amendment, one cannot ignore the political, influence of the governors over the state houses of assembly. But the truth of the matter is that itself can be countered by awareness, by vigilance, and by proactive action. And that is what, even if you have a national conference and you are not proactive to articulate your views, it may not find expression. So the challenge to each and every one of us is not to sit down and be armchair critics, get involved, and get your views to find expression at the state houses of assembly.
So when people want to get involved, we've got to wrap up now. When people want to get involved at the state level, because it's a lot easier. How, if I want to be able to influence or impact this constitution amendment when it comes to the state, how do I do that?
It's either you go through civil society organizations, which are more, articulate in getting things onto the platform, or you go through your representative through the political parties. And don't forget that we have diverse political parties, in the country. And when you get to the state, each state has political parties that are dominant, that may not be, reflective or representative of the political party at the center. For instance, if you come to Lagos, it's ACN, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have PDP. If you go to Anambra State, we have ABGA. So if you go to the north, we have CPC. So all those political parties, they have ideology and stuff like that they profess. And it is the duty of us now to make sure that when this time comes, people should go there en masse and make sure that their voice is heard and nothing is done in secret. So that at least there should be no secret sittings and all that. So that things can be done in the open, and let the voting be done in the chambers. Let us know who is voting against us and who is not. And such people, when election time comes, make sure you don't vote them back. That's the bottom line.
All right, that actually answers most of my questions that I was going to have. But very quickly, as we wrap up now, we take the tweets from Yunus Jr., who says the amendment needed is autonomy of local governments, and House of Assembly Committee on Local Government should supervise their activities. Henry Asedi says the first thing to do is national conference. Call it sovereign or not. It is the starting point. Meanwhile, Obayomi Abiola, I think the Land Use Act should be one area that should be touched. There is need for it to be separated from the Constitution totally.
Well, I'll start from the bottom. Interestingly, the Land Use Act, the people want it to be maintained in the Constitution. So it's the response is that it should be left. And then with the local government, people have advocated for the independence of the local government and the independence of the state legislatures from the from the governor. For as far as the local government is concerned, it starts even with the funding. The issue of having a joint local government state account, it's gone. It's going to go because we now have a local government that will have its own control of its resources instead of the states doing the zero allocation whereby the money comes here and said it, we spend the money for you and this is the receipt for the money.
Well, on that note, Professor Oyelowo Oyewa, Professor of Law, University of Lagos, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
For this conversation. It's been quite interesting.